Some of the biggest country hits ever were also the strangest. A wooden Indian falling in love, a man building a Cadillac out of stolen parts, a fellow named Ahab riding a camel named Clyde. These were real songs, #1 records, playing in every car in America. And if you were there, you remember every ridiculous word. These are the 25 weirdest country songs only baby boomers remember. Subscribe before we start so you don't miss any of our lookbacks. Number 25, Tennessee Birdwalk by Jack Blanchard and Misty Morgan. Let's start with a song that makes absolutely no sense and went straight to #1 anyway. In 1970, a husband and wife duo named Jack Blanchard and Misty Morgan released Tennessee Birdwalk, and it topped the country charts for 2 solid weeks. What is it about? Birds. Specifically, birds with their feathers plucked, their wings removed, and their common sense taken away, walking around, in the song's own words, in their dirty underwear. That's the whole idea. It's pure nonsense from start to finish. And the crowning touch is Misty Morgan leaning into the microphone and whispering a soft little chirp that somehow became the most beloved part of the record. Audiences could not get enough of it. The song was even nominated for a Grammy, losing out to Johnny Cash and June Carter. A #1 hit about half-naked birds in their underwear. That is where we begin, and believe me, it only gets stranger from here. Number 24. Take an Old Cold Tater and Wait by Little Jimmy Dickens. Little Jimmy Dickens stood 4 feet 11 inches tall, wore rhinestone suits bigger than he was, and specialized in songs that made people grin. Way back in 1949, he had one of his first hits with a title that is pure country poetry, Take an Old Cold Tater and Wait. The song is the sad, funny complaint of a poor country boy, the youngest of a big, hungry family, who always got fed last. Whenever company came for Sunday dinner, the grown-ups ate first, and the boy was told to hang back, grab a cold leftover potato, and wait his turn. He blames his puny size and his sorry luck on all those cold taters. It's a little comic gem about being poor and always last in line, sung with a wink. Little Jimmy Dickens became a Grand Ole Opry legend and lived to be 94 years old, cracking jokes the whole way. And this early novelty helped make his name. Number 23, Kaw-Liga by Hank Williams. Hank Williams wrote the saddest songs in country music history. He also wrote a novelty tune about a lovesick wooden statue, and it became one of the biggest hits of his entire career. Kaw-Liga, released in 1953, is the tale of a wooden cigar store Indian standing outside an antique store, hopelessly in love with a wooden Indian maiden across the way. The tragedy, and Hank sings it with a straight face, is that Kaw-Liga is too shy and too wooden ever to speak up. He never tells her how he feels, and one day she is sold and carted off, leaving poor Kaw-Liga to stand there alone forever, still wooden, still silent, still broken-hearted. It has a driving beat, a mock Indian war chant rhythm, and a melody you cannot shake. Hank recorded it in one of his final sessions, and it shot to #1 after his death. Only Hank Williams could take a wooden statue and make you genuinely feel sorry for it. A strange, catchy, unforgettable little masterpiece. Number 22, The Auctioneer by Leroy Van Dyke. Here is a song built entirely around a skill most people can't do at all, the rapid-fire chatter of a livestock auctioneer. In 1956, Leroy Van Dyke, who had actually worked as a real auctioneer, recorded The Auctioneer, a song about a farm boy who dreams of becoming a great auction caller. The hook of the record is Van Dyke himself breaking into that dizzying, tongue-twisting auctioneer's chant, the $25, now 30, now 30. Will you give me 35 nonsense that tobacco and cattle auctioneers rattle off faster than the ear can follow? Audiences were amazed. Nobody had ever heard anything like it on the radio. The song sold millions and made Leroy Van Dyke a star. It's part music, part carnival act, part demonstration of a genuine American skill that most folks had only ever heard at the county stockyard. A song about auctioneering had no business being a giant hit, but there's nothing quite like hearing a man do that chant, and America ate it up. Number 21, Gitarzan by Ray Stevens. You are going to hear the name Ray Stevens more than once on this list because the man was the undisputed king of the country novelty song. In 1969, he gave the world Gitarzan, and it is exactly as ridiculous as it sounds. It's the story of Tarzan swinging through the jungle who decides to start a rock and roll band. Tarzan plays guitar, his companion, Jane, sings, and there is a monkey in the band too, contributing an unforgettable series of grunts and squeaks. Ray Stevens layered his own voice over and over to play all the parts, hollering the jungle yell, doing the monkey noises, the whole absurd circus. It climbed into the top 10. That was the genius of Ray Stevens. He could take the silliest idea imaginable, a guitar-playing Tarzan and his monkey drummer, and turn it into a polished, catchy professional hit record that got the whole family laughing. Gitarzan. Only in America, and only from Ray Stevens. Number 20, Big Bad John by Jimmy Dean. Not every strange hit is a comedy. Some are just plain ODD in the best way, and none more than Big Bad John, the thundering story song that Jimmy Dean took to number 1 in 1961. It tells the tale of a giant, silent, mysterious miner, a man who stood 6'6" and weighed 245 pounds, who never talked much to anyone. What makes the record unforgettable is the sound. Listen closely and you'll hear a clanging, ringing beat under the whole thing. That was a piano player striking a piece of steel with a hammer, right there in the studio, to sound like men working in the mine. When the mine collapses, Big John holds up a sagging timber with his bare hands so 20 other men can escape, sacrificing himself in the darkness below. Jimmy Dean speaks the whole story, rather than singing it, in a deep, dramatic voice, and it gripped the entire country. It won a Grammy, made Jimmy Dean famous enough to later launch a sausage empire, and remains one of the great spoken word records ever made. Number 19, They're Coming to Take Me Away, Ha Ha, by Napoleon XIV. Now, for one of the strangest records ever to become a national hit, a song so bizarre that radio stations eventually got nervous about playing it. In 1966, a man performing under the name Napoleon XIV released They're Coming to Take Me Away, and it raced up the charts. The song is the unhinged rant of a man losing his mind after someone, or as the twist at the end reveals, possibly his runaway dog, has left him. Over a simple military drum beat and a jingling tambourine, his voice grows more and more manic as he cackles about the men in white coats coming to haul him off to the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. It is genuinely unsettling and genuinely hilarious at once. People bought it by the millions, then some stations pulled it for making light of mental illness. There has never been another hit record quite like it, a gleefully deranged novelty that still sounds like nothing else on earth. Number 18, Ahab the Arab by Ray Stevens. Here he is again, Ray Stevens, this time all the way back in 1962, with the very first of his big novelty smashes, Ahab the Arab. It is the desert adventure of a fellow named Ahab who rides his camel across the burning sands each night to visit a lady in the Sultan's harem. The real star of the song, though, is the camel. His name is Clyde, and Ray Stevens gives Clyde an unforgettable series of snorts, grunts, and spitting noises that he performs himself, along with a burst of mock Arabic gibberish that had kids across America imitating it for years. It is complete nonsense, a cartoon set to music, and it launched Ray Stevens as a hitmaker. By today's standards, the whole thing is gloriously politically incorrect, a relic of a different time. But in 1962, it was everywhere. And if you were a kid then, you can probably still do Clyde the Camel's noises right now. Ahab the Arab and his trusty camel Clyde. Number 17, The Battle of New Orleans by Johnny Horton. In 1959, the number one song in the entire country was a bouncy, foot-tapping history lesson about a battle fought in 1815. The Battle of New Orleans, sung by Johnny Horton, told the story of Andrew Jackson's ragtag army whipping the British at the end of the War of 1812, and it did it with a grin. The lyrics are pure comic fun, describing the American soldiers firing their cannons until the barrels melted, then loading up an alligator and using him as a cannon instead, while the terrified British ran off like rabbits. It's a cartoon version of history, and it was irresistible. The song won a Grammy, spent weeks at #1 on both the country and pop charts, and taught a whole generation of school kids more about the Battle of New Orleans than any textbook ever did. A novelty war song 140 years after the fact became the biggest record in America. Johnny Horton would tragically die in a car crash just a year later, but this joyful history lesson lives on. Number 16, Dropkick Me Jesus by Bobby Bare. The title alone tells you everything you need to know about this one. In 1976, the great Bobby Bare recorded a gospel song unlike any gospel song ever written, Dropkick Me Jesus Through the Goalposts of Life. Yes, it is a prayer, and yes, the entire thing is built on a football metaphor. The singer asked the Lord to drop kick him like a field goal, straight through the uprights of righteousness, over the crossbar of good into the end zone of eternal salvation, end over end, neither left nor right, straight through the heart of them righteous uprights. It is completely sincere and completely absurd at the same time, which is exactly why it works. Bobby Bare was known for oddball material, and this was his masterpiece of the strange. It earned a Grammy nomination, which means somebody took a football gospel song very seriously indeed. Only in country music could you kneel down to pray and ask God to treat you like a game-winning field goal. Number 15, Tennessee Stud by Eddie Arnold. This one is strange in a different way, a tall tale so sweeping it feels like a legend passed down for generations. Tennessee Stud, a hit for Eddie Arnold in 1959, is the story of a man and his horse, but what a horse he is. The song follows the singer as he flees Tennessee after trouble over a woman, riding his remarkable horse, the Tennessee Stud, all the way down through the wild country to Texas and Mexico and back again. Along the way, the horse carries him through Indian attacks, gambling halls, and gunfights, always faithful, always fast, the best horse a man ever rode. In the end, both man and horse return home, settle down, and even the horse gets a mate. It is part cowboy ballad, part folk myth, told with such conviction you half believe it really happened. Written by the folk songwriter Jimmy Driftwood, the same man who wrote the Battle of New Orleans, it turned a horse into a genuine American legend. Number 14, The Battle of Cucamonga by Homer and Jethro. Remember the Battle of New Orleans a few songs back? Well, it was such a giant hit that a country comedy duo named Homer and Jethro decided to make fun of it, and their parody won a Grammy of its own. In 1959, these two brilliant wisecracking musicians, known as the Thinking Man's Hillbillies, released the Battle of Cucamonga, and it climbed right up the charts alongside the song it was mocking. Homer and Jethro took Johnny Horton's rousing war anthem and transformed it into the epic saga of a troop of Boy Scouts launching a raid on a nearby Girl Scout camp. Instead of cannons and British soldiers, you get sunburns, poison oak, and love-struck scouts creeping through the woods after the girls. They kept the exact same galloping tune and just filled it with silliness. The record was a genuine hit and won them the Grammy for Best Comedy Performance. Homer and Jethro were far more than clowns. They were superb musicians who happened to be hilarious, and for decades they were the reigning kings of the country music parody, a spoof of a hit that became a hit itself. Number 13, The Streak by Ray Stevens. And here is Ray Stevens for the third and final time with the song that might be the single most 1970s novelty record ever made. In 1974, a bizarre fad swept America, streaking, the act of running naked through a public place as a prank. Ray Stevens, always ready to pounce on a craze, rushed out a song about it called The Streak, and it went straight to #1. The record is set up like a series of on-the-scene news reports, with a flustered reporter interviewing a witness who keeps spotting the streaker at the grocery store, the gas station, the basketball game. The witness's catchphrase, "Don't look Ethel," as he tries and fails to shield his wife's eyes, became something people shouted at each other all across the country. It sold millions, hit #1 on both the pop and country charts, and captured a genuine national craze at the exact right moment. Ray Stevens, the king of novelty, struck gold one more time. Don't look, Ethel. Number 12, May the Bird of Paradise Fly Up Your Nose by Little Jimmy Dickens. Little Jimmy Dickens earns a second spot on this list because in 1965 he scored the biggest hit of his whole career with a song whose title is an insult. May the Bird of Paradise Fly Up Your Nose went all the way to number 1, and it came from an unlikely source, a comeback line that Johnny Carson used on The Tonight Show. The song is about the cheapest, rudest man alive. In one verse, he gives a beggar a single penny. In another, a laundryman calls to return $100 left in his pocket, and he tips the man a dime for the phone call. Everywhere he goes, people get so fed up with his stinginess that they hurl the song's ridiculous curse at him, wishing a bird of paradise straight up his nose and a lop-eared elephant to boot. It is petty, it is silly, and it is gloriously catchy. Little Jimmy Dickens, all 4'11" of him, delivered it with pure comic glee, and America made a song about a cheapskate and a bird up the nose into a number 1 record. Number 11, Rednecks, White Sox, and Blue Ribbon Beer by Johnny Russell. Here's a song that turned a run-down roadside bar into a national anthem for the common man. In 1973, Johnny Russell recorded Rednecks, White Sox, and Blue Ribbon Beer, a loving, funny tribute to the kind of no-frills honky-tonk where working folks went to drink away their troubles. The song paints a vivid picture of the regulars at this dive, the good-hearted, hard-drinking, unpretentious crowd who did not have much money but knew how to have a good time. The genius is in that title, 3 perfect symbols of a whole way of life, the redneck, the cheap white socks, and the Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, all stacked up into one unforgettable phrase. It became a beloved sing-along, an affectionate celebration of plain living that never once looked down on the very people it was describing. Johnny Russell was actually a gifted songwriter who wrote hits for many bigger stars, but he sang this one himself, and it became his signature, the proud anthem of every working man's bar in America. Number 10. The Cover of the Rolling Stone by Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. In 1972, a scruffy band called Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show had a hit song complaining that they could not get their picture on the cover of a magazine, and the joke worked so well it actually landed them on that very cover. The cover of the Rolling Stone is a comic lament about a rock band that has everything: the money, the drugs, the screaming teenage fans, everything except the one thing they crave, respect from Rolling Stone magazine. The song was written by Shel Silverstein, the brilliant children's poet who also wrote a shocking number of country's oddest songs. It's a sly satire of rock and roll, excess, and vanity, sung with a grin. And in the greatest publicity coup imaginable, the real Rolling Stone magazine, tickled by the whole thing, put the band on its cover just a few months later. Life imitated the joke perfectly. A song about wanting to be famous made the band famous, proving that sometimes the universe has a sense of humor too. Number 9, You Never Even Called Me by My Name by David Allan Coe. This one is a joke about country music itself, written by outlaws who knew the genre inside and out. In 1975, David Allan Coe recorded You Never Even Called Me by My Name, a song that its writers, Steve Goodman and John Prine, jokingly called the perfect country and western song. The real fun comes at the very end. Coe explains to the listener that a friend wrote him claiming it was the perfect country song, and Coe protested that it couldn't be because it didn't say anything about mama or trains or trucks or prison or getting drunk. So they wrote one final verse that crams every single one of those cliches into a gloriously ridiculous story where the singer's mama gets out of prison in the rain and gets run over by a train while he's too drunk to save her. It's a hilarious send-up of every country song stereotype ever, sung with total commitment. Country music laughing at itself and doing it perfectly. Number 8, Wolverton Mountain by Claude King. In 1962, Claude King spent 9 weeks at the top of the country chart with the strange and thrilling tale of Wolverton Mountain, a song about a young man foolish enough to fall in love with a girl who happens to have the most terrifying father in the world. Up on Wolverton Mountain lives a girl so beautiful that every young man dreams of her. The trouble is, her father, Clifton Clowers, a fearsome mountain man who does not want anyone courting his daughter, and who is mighty handy with a knife and a gun. The whole town warns the young suitor to stay away, that nobody who climbs that mountain comes back. But love makes a man brave, or foolish, and he decides to climb it anyway to win her heart. Here is the strange part. Clifton Clowers was a real man, the actual uncle of one of the songwriters, who really did live on a real Wolverton Mountain in Arkansas, a true backwoods legend turned into one of the biggest hits of 1962. Number 7, 16 Tons by Tennessee Ernie Ford. Some songs are strange because they are so dark and so catchy at the same time that you barely notice what you're singing. 16 Tons, a monster #1 hit for Tennessee Ernie Ford in 1955, is a grim, bluesy complaint about the brutal life of a coal miner, snapped along by nothing but Ford's smooth voice and a cool, finger-popping beat. The miner in the song works himself to the bone digging 16 tons of coal a day, only to fall deeper and deeper into debt to the company store until he owes his very soul. "I owe my soul to the company store," goes the famous line, a bitter statement about workers trapped in a system rigged against them. And yet the record is so smooth, so effortlessly cool with those finger snaps and that easy swing that it became a giant crossover smash. Tennessee Ernie Ford snapped his fingers, and a song about crushing poverty and debt slavery became one of the most beloved and unlikely #1 hits of the entire decade. Number 6, One Piece at a Time by Johnny Cash. In 1976, Johnny Cash scored his final #1 country hit with a comic caper about the most patient car thief in history. One Piece at a Time tells the story of an auto worker on the General Motors assembly line who wants a Cadillac he could never afford, so he hatches a plan. Over more than 20 years, he smuggles the car out of the factory one single piece at a time, a bolt here, a fender there, hiding parts in his lunchbox and his buddy's motor home. Finally, he has enough to build his dream car in his own garage. The only problem is that he's collected parts from 20 different model years, so the finished Cadillac is a hilarious Frankenstein monster with mismatched headlights, 2 different tail fins, and a title that takes a stack of paperwork to sort out. It's a working man's revenge fantasy told with a grin, and Johnny Cash sells every word. So beloved was the song that fans later actually built the mismatched car from the lyrics. Cash's last trip to #1 and one of his funniest. Number 5, Convoy by C.W. McCall. For a brief, glorious moment in the mid-1970s, America went crazy for Citizens Band Radio, the CB, the walkie-talkie system that truckers used to talk to each other on the highway, and in 1975, a song made entirely of CB radio slang shot all the way to #1. Convoy by C.W. McCall is the strangest #1 hit of the whole decade. The song is told almost entirely in trucker CB lingo, a language most listeners barely understood, about a growing convoy of truckers led by a driver with the handle rubber duck who band together to defy the highway police and speed limits all the way across the country. Breaker 19, 10-4, we got us a convoy. Millions of Americans who had never touched a CB radio suddenly knew all the slang, bought CB sets of their own, and picked out colorful handles for themselves. The song was such a phenomenon it was turned into a Hollywood movie. A #1 hit sung in a secret language of the highway. There has never been anything else like it. Number 4, Uneasy Rider by Charlie Daniels. Before Charlie Daniels became famous for the fiddle showdown in The Devil Went Down to Georgia, he had a talking blues novelty hit in 1973 called Uneasy Rider, and it is a comic masterpiece of a long-haired hippie getting into trouble in the wrong bar. The song's narrator, a long-haired driving through Mississippi, gets a flat tire and is forced to stop at a redneck bar full of tough characters who take an immediate dislike to him. Cornered and about to get pounded, he thinks fast and saves himself with a wild, made-up story, loudly accusing one of the meanest men in the bar of being a communist secret agent who insulted the town and the flag. The whole bar turns on the innocent man in confusion while our hero slips out, jumps in his car, and peels away. It's a clever, fast-talking tall tale about brains beating brawn, delivered by Charlie Daniels in a rapid-fire, spoken drawl, a hilarious slice of 1970s culture clash and one of the great story songs of its kind. Number 3, Dang Me by Roger Miller. Roger Miller was the wittiest man in country music, a fountain of nonsense syllables and clever wordplay, and in 1964 he burst onto the scene with Dang Me, a song that won a Grammy despite being almost pure silliness. It was his first number one, and it announced a brand new kind of star. The song is the cheerful confession of a no-good husband who spends all his money and time drinking and carousing instead of taking care of his wife and baby. He knows he deserves to be punished, singing that they ought to take a rope and hang him, dang him. But the real joy of the record is the sound of it. Roger Miller scat singing, popping out nonsense noises and tongue-twisting syllables between the lines, just for the pure fun of it. It's barely a minute and a half long, and it's packed with more personality than songs 3 times its length. Roger Miller made being clever sound easy, and made silliness sound like genius. Dang me, dang me. Number 2, King of the Road by Roger Miller. And here is Roger Miller again 1 year later with the song that became his masterpiece. In 1965, King of the Road told the jaunty, charming story of a man with nothing to his name, a drifter and a hobo who somehow feels like royalty anyway. The genius of the song is its attitude. This is a man with no money, no home, and no cigarettes but the short ones he finds on the ground, riding the rails and sleeping in cheap rooms, and yet he struts through life proud as a king. He knows every engineer on every train, all the children and all their names. A man rich in freedom, if nothing else. Roger Miller delivers it with that finger-snapping, cool and effortless charm, making poverty sound like the best adventure in the world. It won a small mountain of Grammy Awards and crossed over to the pop charts, becoming one of the most beloved songs of the decade. A song about a happy hobo, sung by the king of clever, and it remains absolutely irresistible. Number 1, A Boy Named Sue by Johnny Cash. And at the very top, the strangest and most beloved novelty song country music ever produced, A Boy Named Sue, recorded live by Johnny Cash in front of a roaring crowd of inmates at San Quentin State Prison in 1969. It became the biggest hit of Cash's entire career, and it is one for the ages. The song, written by the poet Shel Silverstein, tells the story of a man whose deadbeat father, before running off, saddled him with the girl's name Sue. Growing up with that name, the boy had to fight everyone, everywhere he went, growing meaner and tougher with every beating. He spends his whole life searching for the father who cursed him, vowing revenge. When he finally finds the old man in a bar, the two have a brutal knockdown brawl, until the father explains he gave him that name on purpose, knowing a boy named Sue would have to grow up tough to survive. It is funny, it is touching, and it has a genuine twist ending. Johnny Cash had never even rehearsed it properly. He read the words off a sheet of paper on stage, and the prisoners howled with delight at every line. That raw, spontaneous live recording rocketed to the top of the charts and became the signature song of the Man in Black. And that is the wonderful, weird truth about country music. It could break your heart on one record and then have you laughing out loud on the next. Wooden Indians in love, Cadillacs built from stolen parts, hippies outwitting rednecks, a happy hobo who felt like a king, and a boy named Sue. These songs were everywhere once, blasting out of every radio and jukebox in America, and if you grew up with them, you never forgot a single ridiculous word. Nobody writes them like this now, and maybe that's exactly why we remember them so well. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and watch the next video above.